The role played by financial institutions is so important that we cannot think about life without banks. The Banking Act of 1973 was replaced in 1989 by the Banking and Financial Institutions Act of 1989 (BAFIA), which incorporates the Banking Act of 1973 and the Finance Companies Act of 1969 into a single piece of legislation. Commercial banks' primary function is to offer retail banking services including taking deposits, issuing loans and advances, and providing financial guarantees. Banks are also just like any other company that make money from its business. The majority of a bank's earnings came from the fees it charges for its services and the interest it earns on its assets. The interest charged on its obligation was the largest costed. Banks act as an intermediary in channeling funds to borrowers from depositors through the lending process. In addition to loan loss provision, a bank's credit practices expose it into a variety of risks such as market risk, liquidity risk, credit risk, and so on. Maybank, CIMB, and Public Bank are the three largest commercial banks in Malaysia. These three banks are chosen as the research banks because they are Malaysia's most important banks since their overall assets are identical and have similar bank size. The research purpose are to examine the factors that influences the three commercial bank NPL performance. A non-performing loan (NPL) is a loan in which the borrower is in default and has not made any scheduled payments of principal or interest for some time. Usually, the period ranges from 90 to 180 days. There are many commercial banks in Malaysia, but Maybank, CIMB, and Public Bank are chosen to investigate in this research. This is because these three banks are the top three highest performing in Malaysia. Based on the data retrieved from the report, Maybank and CIMB Bank showed an increase in NPL for the past 3 years, while Public Bank had to maintain its performance for the past 3 years. The table shows that CIMB Bank has the highest rate for bad debt over net income compared to Maybank and Public Bank. This might due to a challenging market environment and COVID-19 outbreak and geopolitical uncertainties. Maybank has the top performance, which has a total of 374 branches in Malaysia that has higher NPL rates compared to Public Bank. Maybank has the higher NPL because some new impairments as well as existing ones and weakness related to trade and the external environment. Lending interest rate has an inherent implicate cost on the credit issued by the bank with implication on a loan default. A high level of non-performing loan would depress economic growth owing to many banks refusing to lend. CIMB Bank, Maybank and Public Bank are chosen to see how the determinants affect the credit risk of these three Malaysian commercial banks. There are 5 research objectives related to the 5 research questions. The first one is to determine the profitability relation between banks and NPL. Second one is to determine the connection relation between bank size and NPLs. The third one is to determine the cost effectiveness relationship with NPLs. The fourth one is to determine the connection between unemployment rate and NPL. Last but not least, to determine the interest rate relationship with NPLs.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Shurul Azafi Faizal. Next, we continue with the second chapter in this research, which is literature review. In this chapter, I would like to talk about the dependent and independent variable and also the research framework. Firstly, I want to explain about what is non-performing loan. Non-performing loan is a loan that will be default or is about to be default. When a loan becomes a non-performing, the chance of the debtor paying it in full are significantly reduced. NPL is considered important because they demonstrate how NPL can affect the credit worthiness of the banking sector loan portfolio directly in a nation. Next, we can talk about the independent variable. We start with the bank profitability. Bank profitability determined to be divided in two categories, which is internal and external. Internal determinant of bank profitability were those factors that were driven by management decision and policy objective of the bank. There was a negative relationship between bank profitability and NPLs. Furthermore, we continue with the bank size. Bank size is the ratio of bank asset in a given year to the total bank size of a commercial bank in the same year. Calculated as the log of bank size. Larger bank have a bigger ability to study the ability and accuracy of the information of the bank with a large amount of base level fund, manpower, and advanced technology. As for the receipt, is NPL and bank size had a negative impact. Moreover, cost efficiency is the efficiency of the bank is the most serious problem on the financial market because output of the bank would impact the stability and of the banking enterprise and or the value of the financial instrument. Most studies have shown that there were a negative relationship between NPLs and the bank result for the bank does not crash. Next is unemployment rate. Some trained researchers discovered a statistically Important positive association between the unemployment rate and NPLs. When the unemployment rate rise, so does the number of the non-performing loans. For example, the household income falls, households are unable to pay their debt due to the decrease of in household income. Lastly, the interest rate. There have been several situations in the UK where the financial crisis has resulted in lower interest rate, which has resulted in the lower bank result in a fall in NPLs. Low interest rate result in a decrease in NPL because the customer would try to refinance their home and got a cheaper interest rate on their home loan and more manageable housing payment. We continue with the research framework. The conceptual structure established in this research is shown in the slide. The figure illustrates that determinant that affect NPLs. One of the factors chosen in the study is bank size. Bank size should represent the bank potentiality and stability. Next variable chosen was bank profitability. This was due to the fact that bank profitability was often linked to its risk-taking conduct. Next variable, cost efficiency was chosen in the study because of cost efficiency and NPL are associated in same important ways. Cost effectiveness may be a major indicator of potential risky loan. Further to that, the employment rate was selected as a relevant variable in this research. In this case of unemployment rate, for microeconomic performance can be linked into increase in NPL in advanced economy. Last but not least, the interest rate has been chosen as an independent variable in this research. The value of interest rate and economic growth as the most convincing factor in delaying the banking soundness.
Okay, let's continue with chapter 3, research methodology. In this chapter, we can determine the specific procedures or technique is used in order to find out the relationship between independent variables with NPLs among selected company. The technique consists of sampling, research design, data collection, variables, and statement of hypothesis and analysis methodology. Firstly, research design. Purpose of study is to understand how 6 independent variables affects the NPLs in Malaysia Bank. For the types of investigation, a correlational research, since our research measures a relationship between two variables and our aims to find out either positive or negative correlation. Researcher interference. We classify as minimal interference because we focus on the firm's historical data observation. For units of analysis, in this research is the data collections organization. For the time horizon, this research is also has limited to a specific time frame, which is 5-year period from 2016 to 2020. Hence, the cross-sectional time horizon is used. For sampling, the top 3 financial institutions, which are Maybank, CIMB, and Public Bank, data were obtained in 5 years, which is 2016 to 2020. For data collection method, during the research, our main data is secondary data, which includes companies' annual reports and websites. Plus, the secondary data are economically and conveniently accessible. It helps us a lot to collect the data. For test consideration for data analysis, the test will be carried out using the eViews 10 software, and result will be interpreted to determine if the hypothesis should be supported, such as descriptive analysis, correlation analysis, and regression analysis. In conclusion, by using research methodology, it helps us a lot in order to solve our research problem so that we can achieve a systematic study, formulating a hypothesis, collecting and analyzing data. Thank you.
Next, I would like to continue with research data. The research data analysis is based on the data we collect from 2011 until 2020 from 3 banks, which is Maybank, CIMB and Public Bank. So for descriptive analysis, the mean NPL of the commercial bank in Malaysia is 1.939667. As for standard deviation, The dispersion of NPL from its mean is 1.275946 as for overall. The commercial bank with the highest NPL is CIMB in 2011, which is 5.11, while the lowest for the NPL is Public Bank in 2020 as the value is 0.36. They indicates that the bank with higher NPL which will not be repaid by the borrower in full or is subject of late repayment. Next, the second research analysis is based on correlation, which to determine the relationship between dependent variable and 5 independent variables. To conclude, the relationship between NPL and BP, RI, and UR had negative relationship, and BS and CE had positive relationship. Also, there is no significance for BP, BS, IR, and UR except for CE. Next, for regression analysis, F statistic value is 27.2228 and the F statistic p-value is 0. The null hypothesis must therefore be rejected because the value has significant level less than 5%. Besides, the value of R squared was 0.8501, which means the variance in the company non-performing loan can be explained by the variation of independent variable. The adjusted R squared value was 0.8158189 that have the same significance of R squared. For probability value, every independent variable, which is BP, BS, IR, and UR, with 0.5222, 0.1493, 0.0827, and 0.0871 show there is no significant value except for CE, which the value is 0, means that it was significant.
The next chapter is conclusion and recommendation. This chapter will conclude the analysis based on the summation of data obtained from the research analysis, while also making a few recommendations based on the result outcome. For the finding on major discussion, as we can see on the table on my right side, it shows about the relationship between the independent variables to the NPLs. The first variable is bank profitability. It stated that the relationship of the variable to NPL was negative. Next is bank size, which showed that a positive relationship to NPLs. After that, the next variable is cost efficiency. The data mentioned on the table stated that it has a positive relationship to NPLs. Besides, unemployment rate and interest rate also show a positive relationship to NPL as well. As for the recommendations, the first one is testing out other variables. As stated in the limitations, credit risk, liquidity risk, and operational risk are variables that influence NPLs. It is recommended that further study on bank internal factors such as lending requirements, lending policy, and credit analysis can be done. Furthermore, before making a loan, the bank should enhance its risk management and assess the capacity and profile of the consumer. As a result, it provides reliable and sufficient data for the future researchers who are interested in conducting study on a similar issue. Other than that, the next recommendation is studying NPLs of other countries. A wider area of future research will assist in delivering better results. For example, a comparison analysis between commercial banks in Malaysia and overseas countries to determine which of the major variables will affect NPLs because each nation has a different economic climate. Additionally, future research should include more macroeconomic elements in the research, such as the inflation rate. The level of inflation will have an effect on NPLs because when inflation rate increases, the NPLs will increase as well. Last but not least, the conclusion is this research examines how the independent variable affect NPLs on Maybank, Public Bank, and CIMB Bank. In order to carry out the result of analysis on each bank's annual report and the data from website of Bank Negara Malaysia, descriptive analysis, regression analysis, and correlation analysis have been used referred to run the data on an annual basis from 2011 to 2020. eView software is excellent for inferential statistics and analytical data screening. The findings are consistent with many other scholars' assumptions and observations. However, based on the recommendation, potential investigators may be able to expand on this research.